Welcome to another episode of the Hands of Shakti podcast. Today, we are thrilled to host Sethi, an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as an entrepreneur. Leher is the founder and director of Something Creative and has made a remarkable impact as an advocate for human rights, women's empowerment, and community development. She serves as the secretary for the Indian Council for Human Relations, the Indian Council for UN Relations, and the Indo Indonesia Friendship Society. She has previously served as the director of Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana and is currently the president of the Confederation of Women Entrepreneurs. Her contributions have earned her accolades like the National Changemakers Award, and she has been featured in Femina magazine as an inspiration. I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Please subscribe to stay tuned for more episodes. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Hands Shakti podcast. I'm your host Sahani, and today I'm thrilled to have Miss Leher Sethi here with us. Hi Leher.
Hi, Suhani. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely having you. So my first question to you is: so you went from being an engineer to a creative visionary. So what motivated you to prioritize empowering women, and how has that shaped the work you do today?
Um, it's a very tricky question. So, when you talk about empowering someone, you can't really empower anybody. Power is not something that you give in someone's hands. You just can make people aware of the power that they already hold or the power that should be theirs. In this case, when we talk about women's empowerment, it's just a sort of emancipation wherein women be made aware that certain decisions are theirs to make. Their life is their own and they are responsible for it. So, something as simple as that can go a long way towards empowering a woman. So that's what we focus on. That's what I focus on, creating awareness around, various um, causes. One of the areas where I work is also helping women become financially independent. So, one of the first steps that you need to take towards being independent, being empowered, is to um, being also uh, emotionally, socially, and economically empowered, right? Because when you
Yeah,
have the expenses in your own hands, when you have your financials, it is easier for you to put your foot down when it comes to certain things,
yeah,
certain areas, your decisions. You will be a part of the decision making process in a household if you also have a stake in the household's expenses, right? If you're contributing towards the household expenses, then
yeah,
you are more likely to be taken along when certain decisions are to be made. What house should we buy? Which car should we buy? Which school should we put our child in, right?
yeah,
Whereas if the husband or the father is only bringing in all the money, I do feel, I mean, of course, you can't generalize. There are a lot of really good men out there who take their wives along. But of course, I mean, it is easier for a woman to have a say in certain matters if she also is financially independent. And I think it's very important in today's day and age to have that financial independence in one's kitty.
yeah. I think that's also like that's also one of the main things we focus at Hansa Shakti. And our main thing is because what we like when you have that financial independence, it's a little amount of money, it's in your control and it's something you fully have control over. And it sort of adds to your self-esteem as well, because when you have the ability to like go into a market and just purchase something with your own money or something you've earned, that sense of fulfillment is also you can't get from someone else's money. If you're reliant on your father, your mother, your sister, or on your husband for money, you're not going to get that as you get it from what you earn. So financial independence, I think, is definitely like very important for empowerment. My
Also,
next, yeah,
sorry. Also, to add to that, a lot of unpaid household work, a lot of the unpaid household work, as well as childcare work, is mainly being done by women. And
yeah,
I feel that, a lot of women don't really get the kind of appreciation that they should for it because there is no financial amount attached to that work.
yeah,
So that is quite unfair, the way that we say that, oh, the father is babysitting. How can a parent be babysitting their own child? It's
Yeah.
parenting, and parenting should be a combined effort. Both parents should be equally involved. And similarly, if both parents are working outside, they're drawing similar salaries, then I do feel that men should also contribute more towards household chores. Uh, Most of the burden of unpaid labor, unfortunately,
Falls on women.
falls on women the world over. So that's something that we should work upon changing.
Yeah. So how do you, like you said, what do you think are the most prominent challenges faced by women in Indian society?
Uh, See, the first and foremost thing that I feel brings women down in the Indian society is the burden of patriarchy. It is
Yeah.
not just something that women carry alone. Its burden is on everyone, our society in general, right? Um, a lot of it is inherent. It is internalized to a point wherein we don't even realize that it exists with
Yeah.
within us. Simple things like, we'll say, oh, you're wearing a pink shirt. Why are you wearing a pink shirt? To a small child, like, we start doing these things at a very, very young age. We'll tell boys, you shouldn't cry, you're being a sissy, man up, things like that. So I feel that that is something that we need to change about ourselves. It also, uh, mentally, we there's a lot of focus on mental health of people nowadays. So women and men's mental health suffers because of this sort of gender stereotyping, and the kind of
Yeah.
biases that we have, in the society. So I feel that, all of this does play a major role. Like, women who go out to work are many a times they're made to feel very guilty about not giving enough time to the household, whereas we don't do that to men.
Yeah.
If men have to travel for work, and it is required, I mean, it's part of their job, nobody will question them. However, if
Yeah.
a woman has to travel for work, or she has to go outside or stay out late hours, then we tend to judge her, which is not fair. Because if a woman is working, then, if you're making her do the same work that men do, then you should give her the same freedoms that you give to men as well. So it's as
Mm.
simple as that. It's a lot of guilt that I feel working mothers also live with. So
Yeah.
all of this, I think, it does bring women down. We have to plan our work in such a way that we keep thinking at the back of our minds about how the family will react, how people are going to judge us based on what we're doing, um, which is a kind of a challenge. Overcoming that is a real challenge. It's something that the society needs to work on collectively.
Yeah, I agree. Like you mentioned toxic masculinity, and recently, I don't like those two very successful films, Animal, and we had Kabir Singh as well, where I think they did propagate roles of toxic masculinity was propagated, as well as very regressive gender roles I think were portrayed in those films. So how do you think those films have a role in shaping societal values?
Of course, they have a role in shaping societal values. You see, it's a cycle. It's a very unfortunate cycle that we're all trapped in. So, our society propagates and promotes these gender roles. And because we've normalized them to such an extent,
Yeah.
that is why movies can, without any fear of any consequences, show these kind of really negative, regressive gender roles, in which, women are put down. I mean, the treatment of women in these movies is just absolutely horrible. They're
Yeah.
reduced to nothing more than being props. And the society be going and watching this is further normalizing it. There are people like you and me who might get offended, but we don't really count, because, the numbers of those who find this entertaining is far more. So it's like a
Yeah.
cycle, right? Society influences our the entertainment industry, which in turn influences the society. So it's a cycle that until it breaks, right? Until people stop accepting such movies, people start opening up and saying that, oh, this is not okay, it's not going to change. And the treatment of women in this country, anyway, is, I mean, where we've got one of the highest crime rates against women, which is a known
Yeah.
fact. So, in a
Yeah.
country like that, if you're showing that it's okay to treat women the way that these movies show, it is extremely harmful. It's scary, to be honest. And this shouldn't be allowed. Ideally, it shouldn't be allowed. But our songs are like that. I mean, all our hit songs and this whole item number concept, it's extremely demeaning to women. It
Yeah.
objectifies women, it dehumanizes women, but then we're okay with it because we've normalized this kind of culture.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also, if they see, or like the relationship between a father and son, like if they have that kind of, they've grown up having that kind of relationship where it has been abusive like that, and then you see it in a movie, it gets normalized for you, and you think, oh, this is the way it should be. So like for like you said, it's like it's happening in it's happening in society, and then the movie's justifying the fact that it's happening, but then you're saying that, oh, it's creative freedom, but then it's also getting, it's normalizing it for another generation of people, and they're not breaking that
Yeah,
cycle, instead the cycle's continuing.
exactly.
um
And also, a lot of people who watch these movies aren't as aware as people like you and me. So,
yeah.
for people who are aware, it might not make any difference. They'll probably go on living their lives the way that they are. But there are young audiences out there that are at a very impressionable stage in life, and they do get impressed by these movies. They want to behave like the heroes. They want to dress up like the heroes, and yeah, they do end up behaving that way towards women, which is very scary because we don't want a society where women are treated like that.
Yeah. um so through your work, through your roles in organizations like the Indian Council of Human Relations and the Indian Council for UN Relations, how do you use these platforms to sort of drive social change and advocate for rights?
So we work on various United Nations agendas, and they have a lot of national days that are celebrated. Like you have the Women's Day, for example. And it is, again, we spread awareness, we talk about things that people aren't really talking about, and through that we try and bring about a change in the society, because the first step towards changing, making any change in society, is to make people aware that a change is necessary. There's another way to live your life. This isn't right. you know um, a lot of women in households, whether they are rich or poor, are told that they shouldn't work. हमारे घर की औरतें तो काम नहीं करती.
Yeah.
And that is a very regressive way to look at things. It's not just about financial freedom, it is also about a woman who might want to go out there and create an identity for herself. She might be wanting to go and work for money or for charity or anything. So she should be able to do that. Also, domestic violence against women is something that, and sexual harassment of women is something that I feel really moves me.
Yeah.
And if you were to speak to your domestic staff, the people who come to our households every day to do most of our work, you will get to know what kind of lives they live. In most households of women who come to work, the kind of life that they live is very sad. I mean, they're so used to being hit by their husbands, especially, the ones who are alcoholic, that
Yeah.
they have normalized it. And in turn, it has also normalized it for their children, because the children watch their parents indulging in this every day. The woman being beaten, at times she retaliates, might hit back or abuse the man. But this is
Yeah.
not the kind of toxic relationship you want the next generation to have. But that is what, it's a cycle that goes on repeating itself. Children who
Yeah.
see toxic relationships are likely to indulge in toxic relationships later on in life. They either become abusive or they end up taking abuse from another partner. So it is very important to break the cycle. So through these organizations, we do various events. to spread awareness on human rights. Women's rights are also human rights,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so that is something that we do.
So through this, obviously you have to reach out. Like one thing that I've noticed that it's really difficult to, even if you are able to reach out to the women, there's so many apprehensions where, they're afraid of like, going back to that, like with their families, they're afraid of seeking that help, or they're afraid of, um stepping out of their comfort zone as well because they're so used to this lifestyle. Like some of them just don't want to, they're so stuck in this cycle but they don't want to leave. So how do you think, what strategies do you think are the most effective to bring, like make them aware that they have this the power is in their hands, and the strength lies within them? What strategies do you think are the most effective to help them realize their potential?
Suhani, it's very complicated. There's no simple answer to that question.
Yeah.
It's a long process. A lot of them require counseling for a really long time, and everyone has their own time when they're ready to leave, if
Yeah.
they are prepared to leave at all. One of the things that's really shocking that I come across on a regular basis is women who justify the violence against them, which is again a part of, the kind of patriarchal setup that we live in. There are women who will say, उसने मुझे मारा लेकिन मैं तो घर लेट पहुंची थी ना, तो मुझे तो मार पड़नी चाहिए थी, मेरी गलती थी. how do you
Yeah.
how do you tackle that? How do you deal with that? Or like people who come to you and say, I mean, there have been cases wherein women have come to me and said that, my husband is beating me so much, I really want action to be taken against him, but I will not give a written complaint, but I'm not willing to give in writing a complaint. So I mean, I can't help women when they are not willing to put it down on paper. And that is something that, we face a lot of times. We come across this because women have this, I mean, they still look upon the other person as a family member, which is fair. uh,
Yeah.
Also, a lot of times they are willing to work with the partner, which is a very good thing, but the partners also need to be willing to work. So if both the people are willing to work, then it works, otherwise it doesn't. The sincerity needs to be there. So it's very difficult. There's no one straight answer. There are women who genuinely want to come out of
Yeah.
toxic relationships, and those are the ones that I think we need to focus on. We need to help them, and the others, we need to keep counseling them. We need to keep the space open for them so that whenever they're ready to seek help, whenever they're ready to move on, we are there for them. That's all we can do. It's not fair to blame those women. Like, a lot of people say that,
Yeah.
if she was in such a bad relationship, why didn't she just walk out? If she was being beaten, why didn't? It's not that simple. It's
Yeah.
quite complicated. There are a lot of layers, a lot of things that are involved in the
Yeah.
process. There are children involved, there are families involved in our structure. So it's not a simple answer.
Yeah,
Ideally,
especially, yeah. I
yeah.
think especially if you've been conditioned that way since childhood and you've seen it like you mentioned growing up, you've seen, your parents being abusive to each other, like your father being abusive to your mother, and then everyone around you. So I think when it breaks with like one woman, like then it's like if one woman in your society starts working and she's perhaps left her abusive husband, then you see it as a little more normal to like break through that because it's always that social stigma as well, right? Wanting to leave your partner, you feel like what's the point? Like there's always that.
Yeah, but I mean, I tell this to a lot of people who seek counseling and talk to
Yeah.
me, that it is not that simple. A lot of times people want to change, but behaviors and nature. If for the if for 40 to 50 years you've behaved a certain way, unless you're really sincere and you want to change, it is very difficult for someone to change. And
Yeah.
a lot of women say that they stay in these relationships for the children, but the children are the worst affected when they see the normalization of such toxic relationships. It is going to harm their mental health in the long run. They're either going to, it's a cycle that continues to repeat itself. They're either going to become abusive or they're going to end up suffering abuse, because you end up seeking similar partners who behave like your parents. I mean, you seek that out because that's
Yeah.
what is familiar to you. That is what family means to you. That is what love means to you. Uh, Children's understanding of love is through how their parents treat them or how
Yeah.
they treat each other, right?
Yeah.
So, if you really care for your children, please do not stay in relationships like that, because it is not good for anyone to be in toxic relationships where there is abuse, where there is violence. It doesn't help anyone. And,
Yeah.
that's something that I would like to put out there.
Yeah. At a governmental level or an organizational level, what do you think can be done to help women who are in abusive relationships, or to help, children as well who are in setups where, abusive children is also not talked a lot about in Indian society. It's looked upon as very normalized. And so what do you think can be done at a governmental level to support that and to, help these people?
Yes, so we've normalized violence and abuse to quite an extent, which is
Yeah.
not how it should be. It is not okay to hit your children. Um, I have slapped my son, once or twice when he's
Yeah.
been really naughty and when he was younger. It really got on my nerves. But I realized that that's not the way to deal with a problem. You're not helping yourself or helping the child improve their behavior by lashing out at them. There needs to be dialogue. You need to communicate better. I think on the governmental level, one of the things that really needs to be done is that the creation of more shelter homes for women who come from, battered women who are battered and want to get away from their relationships, these kind of relationships. And the process needs to be more streamlined. Like I
Yeah.
said, it's financially dependent women who are more likely to stay in relationships like this. So
Yeah.
uh, if you give them an alternative, if you give them a place to stay, if you give their children, uh, you know, um, an education, if you're willing to support them, I think many of them might want to take that up. So the government does need to work on creating more shelter homes and more refuges for women like this, and that is lacking. I mean, we don't have enough ways for women to come out of these kind of
Situation.
relationships because they don't have anywhere to go. A lot of times, our structural practices, our familial values are such that even the parents of the girl will tell her to go back and to try and sort things out. We don't look at revolt as being very positive. We
Yeah.
teach women to learn to reconcile. We teach them to compromise. But when there's violence, I think there is no compromise. There shouldn't be a compromise. Ideally, there should be a refuge, and that is something that I think the government needs to work on.
Yeah. So now we're coming to the end of the podcast. My last question to you is, I know you've mentioned to me that you're developing a platform to further support and empower women. So could you please share your vision for your platform and what and your hopes for what change it will bring?
So we're launching a platform called the People Against Patriarchy Summit.
Yeah.
We're trying to make people understand. So, like I said, the first step is to make people aware of the generational patriarchy, the internalized patriarchy that we all carry. And many a times, even though we might be well meaning, we might try not to be part of, not to propagate certain stereotypes and biases. It is so internalized in us that we don't even realize that we end up doing it anyway. So we're trying to make people aware of the patriarchy that women go through. Not just women, actually, women, men, people who don't identify as either women or men. Everyone is affected by it negatively. And the whole concept of patriarchy is that, men are better, men should rule, it should be the decision of, the men. And that is not fair.
Yeah.
And also, you have these two cases of two men having committed suicide recently.
Yeah.
So, what does that tell you? I don't know if you're aware, but the suicide rates all over the world, including India, show you that three-fourths of suicides are actually committed by males. not by women.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So what that
Mm,
tells you is that, men are not taught. Their emotions are not uh, taken as seriously. Since they are
yeah,
children, right? We tell them to bottle them in, don't cry, don't be a sissy, man up. And that is what leads to this. I mean, in both these cases, the men's families have come forward to say that they did not share with them the kind of pressure that they were going through.
yeah,
While girls are, they're encouraged to talk about their emotions, they're encouraged to cry and let it out. I think we need to be more empathetic towards men. They have the same emotions that any other human being does. I mean, it's not like just because you're a man, you don't have emotions, or that you are not allowed to express your emotions. So, what happens is men become incapable of articulating their emotions and expressing them. They don't know, they don't have a vent. They feel that they're under pressure all the time because they have all the financial liabilities on themselves, right?
yeah,
They are taught not to share, handle it on your own. They feel that they'll be perceived as being weak, incapable, or unsuccessful if they were to show that they failed at something, or that they're not doing as well as the family expects them to. So
yeah,
they look at suicide as a way out. And that is something that people aren't thinking about. But patriarchy is as harmful to men as it is to women.
yeah,
And if you allow women to be a partner, she can also help you. If she earns 50% of the household income, she's contributing, the pressure on the man reduces. And
yeah,
that's how it should be. It should be a partnership. I've never believed in this thing that हर आदमी के पीछे एक औरत होती है, every successful man has a woman behind her. No, both men and women have the right to be successful, and they should be with each other in doing this. So these are the kind of ideas and things that we're discussing. We're talking about how patriarchy is harmfully affecting our society, and how we're a very patriarchal setup, and this hasn't been done anywhere in the world. They haven't, nobody's ever actually taken up patriarchy directly. So we're doing that. And also with the whole world going towards a right wing system
yeah.
and going back to traditional norms, I think we're promoting and propagating more patriarchy, which is going to affect the mental health of everyone. So we need to make people aware of that, and that's what we're going to be trying to do.
Yeah, I think that'd be great as well because, like you were mentioning, the world is moving more right wing, and now even on social media, you're having all of these ideas being propagated towards you, where you have, women now going into more traditional gender roles, which is not wrong when it's a choice, but when you're propagating that as the
Yeah.
only choice that a woman should make, then then there's something that is, and the fact that it's being so popularized now, I think it's important that we have a stand that's against that and against these patriarchal norms being propagated. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for coming. The conversation was really insightful, and I'm sure listeners will enjoy listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sohani. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed being here.